Hello, Cookie. Thank you for interviewing me. I was 3 years old when my mother became a Jehovah's Witness. My mother was Catholic, and what shocked her was that German Catholics were fighting French Catholics during the Second World War. She had lost her uncle to American bombings in Saint-Nazaire. She was shocked. When it came to her religion, she couldn't find an answer. She had asked a priest about it. And of course, he dodged the question. For her, when the Jehovah's Witnesses came along, she saw the answer to her question because the Jehovah's Witnesses were the ones who said they did not take part in wars. Later, in the teachings I received from my mother, I completely accepted this, and I recognized the refusal to participate in war as an important point in favor of the true religion. For me, it was the true religion because it did not accept going to war. That's why, at the age of 18, since my father was not actually a Jehovah's Witness, I found myself with a bit of a double possibility. I made my choice in an informed way, and I refused to do my military service. I spent a year in prison. And then afterwards, I got reasonably involved in this particular religion since I got married, had 2 wonderful children, and then eventually became a ministerial servant and also an elder. So I took part in various activities without really dedicating my whole life to it. Like, for example, the full-time servants who gave up having a family, gave up having children. I didn't really have the drive, let's say, to do preaching for hours on end. I had what Jehovah's Witnesses call the pioneer spirit, in the sense that I really enjoyed talking about my beliefs. Preaching for me was really not something that bothered me, quite the opposite. That ties in a bit with freedom. If you have freedom of thought, to me, you have freedom of expression, and they go hand in hand. If you think something but you can't say it, for me, that's not right. There's no freedom of thought if you can't express it. As for me, I expressed my beliefs very easily and with pleasure. So that's pretty much how I've lived my whole life, honestly. There were always things that bothered me, things that unsettled me or made me feel uneasy, but not more than that. There wasn't really anything significant that actually stopped me from continuing in this religion. I was around people who were nice. Socially, it was actually pretty good. There was a certain environment. It was a bit like being in a club with connections with people who generally had good morals.
All right. Maybe we should clarify the context here a little more. When you were a Jehovah's Witness, you made the decision to leave that organization for some very specific and personal reasons, which were closely related to defending your freedom of thought during the pandemic. Could you tell us a bit more with that and what led you to make that choice?
Everything was fine until the pandemic hit. So in 2020, things went well because I love technology and computers and all that. So when we went into lockdown and started holding all the meetings on Zoom or by video conference, it was great. I had actually been waiting for that for a long time, you could say. I really liked all that technology. It was good. Then came the whole vaccine issue. At first, I was calm about it because I thought I was used to medical questions apart from blood transfusions. Among Jehovah's Witnesses, that was really something left up to personal choice. We weren't supposed to give our opinion. As elders, we were always told, when it comes to medical matters, everyone does what they want, so you don't give your opinion, because otherwise, if you do, people would just go along with it. We were in an environment, I think you experienced this too, where you could just say, look, this is how I treated myself. That's all there is to it. But we weren't pushy at all. We didn't try to exert any kind of insistent influence or pressure on others. When the whole vaccine thing happened, I thought, surely it will be the same as before. I never imagined that people could ever be forced like that. Not at all. But we were. We really, truly were. I can personally testify to that. I experienced all of it. And so we really were forced. Not directly, but indirectly, just like all the governments did, the whole society, everyone did it. And so the Jehovah's Witnesses did it, the governing body did it. I thought, this isn't right, this isn't right.
Actually, to put things back into context a bit, at the time there was a kind of uncertainty and confusion about what exactly should be done to effectively manage and respond to this pandemic, which worried and concerned the entire world, not just France alone. And since the organization was an international one, The message we received was, in fact, an international message intended for a global audience. What was it specifically in the governing body's message that made you feel particularly uncomfortable or uneasy?
So actually, yes, the governing body really did everything we were told, everything the WHO said. Let me remind you that the WHO is part of the UN, and so, well, they even went further. What is particularly shocking is this double talk, actually. This double talk where they say there is no blood in the vaccines, but you do what you want. Everyone is responsible for their own choices. The higher authorities say that you are better protected when you are vaccinated than when you are not, but still you do what you want. And little by little, this kind of double talk became so prevalent that, in fact, all Jehovah's Witnesses understood that if you wanted to obey Jehovah, you had to get vaccinated. Me, you see, over time, well, obviously there were about 10% of people who really didn't want to get vaccinated no matter what, who didn't get vaccinated. 10 out of 100, let's say. In a congregation of 200 people, there were 10. We were a core group of 10. Well, there were others too who were, but they said, okay, well, that's the will of Jehovah. Now, I understand that it is the Jehovah's will. So there wasn't any kind of thing like, if you get vaccinated, you'll be disfellowshipped. But honestly, it really didn't go that far at all, in fact, because at one point, so it happened very quickly, because you see, when in July 2021, the governing body made a formal announcement and clearly stated, just to clarify, we obey the superior authorities. There is no religious justification whatsoever for refusing the vaccine. Okay, well, that meant what it meant after all. And then he said, here at Bethel in the United States, 98% of people are vaccinated. When I heard that, 98%, I mean, a proportion like that, you never reach it. I've never seen it in any country. You just can't achieve that proportion. I mean, no matter how much effort you put in, it's just not possible. So here, I mean, it's clear that the Bethel members were not left free. It's just not possible. So when I heard that, I wrote to the governing body. 2 days later, I told myself, no, this isn't right. I told them, listen, you're giving us numbers here. You've always told us not to influence others. And now you're influencing us. You're influencing everyone. The whole world, you're influencing everyone.
So actually, from talking with you a bit, what affects you the most here is that this is a very direct attack on your personal freedom to choose the specific therapy you would select, in this case for this particular pandemic. So what you're really denouncing is a kind of attack on fundamental freedom. Is that right?
Yes. That's what's been called coercion, meaning that everything was done to make people accept it. Well, I saw it in society in general, and also in society within the context of my work, I saw it. I mean, at the time when the French president in December 2020 said, I will not make vaccination mandatory, only about 30% of people were in favor of the vaccine, because in France, well, it was a time when people were really questioning this method, this therapy, this particular approach. And so when you also think about the president's manipulative words saying, I will not make vaccination mandatory, first of all, how does a president have the right to forbid or to mandate something? That's not within his rights. A president isn't there to say, well, I feel like people shouldn't get vaccinated. And it's manipulative because, in fact, he actually did the opposite of what he said in reality, in practice. He said, I won't make it mandatory, but it became mandatory. Some people lost jobs, and the governing body did the same. And there was really this terrible distortion where they say, yes, do as you wish, but if you talk about the vaccine, I experienced this in elders' meetings, if you talk about the vaccine, be careful. You might cause divisions. And we know that as an elder, if you cause divisions, that's grounds for disfellowshipping. So, I mean, that was really, it was terrible. When you can no longer talk about a subject, there's a problem. When you can't talk about a topic anymore, it becomes taboo. Freedom, well, it's just not there anymore. It's like being in the Soviet Union, where you're allowed to say this, and this, but you're not allowed to say that. So we were in a totalitarian system. We plunged into a totalitarian system. Of course, for others who have distanced themselves from Jehovah's Witnesses for a longer time, they already know it's a totalitarian organization. For me, it was something that became glaringly obvious at that moment. Before, let's say, I was in denial because it didn't bother me. But now, obviously, it was something that affected me and affected my body. So at that point, I understood, yes, it's a totalitarian system, meaning they try to get inside your body. In this case, they were trying to get inside my body. It was a violation of my conscience and my body. And I experienced it. I refused to let myself be violated, but my brother, who was very close to me, same views about therapy and all that, he broke down. After 6 months, he broke down. He said, the members of the governing body, they always told us we prayed a lot for Jehovah to enlighten us and so on. So I can't believe that for 6 months they prayed and Jehovah didn't listen to them. Good night. See you next time.
You're not the only one who had a sort of awakening during the pandemic. It was pretty decisive for us to realize that. Maybe we'll go into a little more detail about the steps you're taking regarding the governing body. And then the term anti-vax, which is a rather generic term, refers to those who, in any case, question systematic vaccination. Will define that as well. But what particularly interests me in this specific case is the fact that there was a noticeable change in direction in the governing body's discourse, which up until that point had always consistently defended the idea of individual freedom, which was the official message being communicated. And for you, do you think there was really a significant change in their discourse regarding that matter?
Yes, conscience was respected and was emphasized in all Watchtower Society publications and in the medical field in particular, where the importance of individual conscience was regularly highlighted and regarded as so. Sometime before, I believe he refers to a 2014 Watchtower in his book, and he writes about it very well. For those who remember, there was even a photo. It was a couple who sold medication as part of their job, and then they would take the opportunity to talk about it at the Kingdom Hall. So in that case, each person's conscience was actually mentioned. We shouldn't push others or force them in any way. That's it. So there was a big change. That is to say, now they're saying, yes, you can do whatever you want. The governing body replied to me each time. I wrote 2 letters, and 2.5 months later, they answered, giving a whole speech about biblical principles. Do what you want, but above all, don't get close to conspiracy theories. But you do what you want in your own way, at the end of the day, of course. But the pressure was still there, lingering, always present in the background, never really going away. And then the pressure really, truly intensified dramatically, even more when David Splane gave a talk saying, but don't you think Jehovah is going to let everyone die or what? Because, well, there you go. You mentioned anti-vaxxers, but actually the world was kind of split in two between those who were all going to die because they got vaccinated and those who were all going to die because they didn't get vaccinated. So yes, there were deaths, but not everyone died.
Yeah, just so we're clear, actually it's about a change in the way medical care is presented as an individual choice, in the sense that they did more than just recommend getting vaccinated. There was a kind of pressure. How would you describe that? Why is it that for you, recommending vaccination represents a change in direction?
It's a social pressure that we experienced. Social pressure, that's what happened all over the world. It's social pressure, meaning that everyone around you is getting vaccinated. That's it. So, and then you're basically told, don't say anything. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you no longer have the right to say, well, no, I'm not getting vaccinated because I think it's dangerous, because of this, because of that. And so this social pressure, and then this social pressure was also accompanied by videos that were pretty explicit, you know. I mean, well, now people can always say, oh, yes, but they didn't really say that. But honestly, when you've lived through it, everyone who went through it knows. I had contact with brothers who didn't want to get vaccinated. I reached out to them afterwards. So you didn't get vaccinated? Well, yes, no, but I understood that, you know. And on top of that, there was a whole narrative. So in 2022, in every Watchtower article, it was all about you must obey. Well, we were kind of used to that. Obedience is blessed, that little children's song, all of that. But this time it was systematic. You must obey, you must obey, you must obey. So my wife and I, we were fed up. But 2022, I can tell you, it was really awful. And here too, you see, it's not direct. It's not you must obey by getting vaccinated, but rather you must obey the organization, Jehovah and his organization. But it was repeated so many times, even within a single Watchtower study, that it really became unbearable. For me, there was only one thing my wife and I wanted to do after a year, and that was to disobey. So we told ourselves we have to disobey. It was hellish, and it kept going because we distanced ourselves in 2023, but it kept going, you know. I have contacts with brothers and sisters who tell me it's all the time, nonstop. And on top of that, there was the added insistence that you have to obey Jehovah and his organization. And that's when I realized, and that's when I opened my eyes. I realized that it was particularly serious. That is, in the minds of many of my fellow believers, I saw that Jehovah, that is, God, you know, we obey God. But in reality, you're obeying 8 people. At the time, it was 8 members of the governing body. You're obeying Jehovah, basically. But actually, it was just a shortcut. So they put themselves in Jehovah's place. They put themselves in God's place. And so I told myself, okay, that's it. It's the guru. It's the sect. That's what it is. He decides everything, basically. He decides everything. Because, you see, I saw my brothers who were convinced that the vaccine was bad and who said, well, never mind if I die, Jehovah will resurrect me. Thank you. At that point, I told myself, that's it. It's over. We're really in a group that's capable of going as far as suicide, of going to sacrifice, a living sacrifice.
That was decisive for you.
So at that point, it still took me a while. It took me some time. I wrote once, twice. The second time I wrote to the governing body, I said, stop forcing us to get vaccinated. You see, I was really direct, and they answered me in a convoluted way. And at that point, I said to myself, that's it. They told me, no, look, you see, in such and such update, and they quoted their statements to me. We never said you had to get vaccinated. They quote that to me every time. That's when I understood. If you want, I really understood that it was intentional on their part. It was intentional. They knew what they were doing.
In fact, you wrote 2 letters to the governing body to denounce their attitude. And their response was pretty generic, right?
Yes, their response was actually good at first. So I was telling my brothers and sisters, you know, I wrote to the governing body, and they told me, no, but you respect your choice. And the second time, well, I was direct. They weren't mean, you know, they didn't try to contact the branch or anything. Each time they go through the branch to give me their response, but well, they weren't mean. But still, I saw that it was perverse. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that when they didn't tell people to get vaccinated, it was because, well, they didn't want to deal with legal repercussions afterwards. Like someone saying, yes, but you told us we had to get vaccinated. Now I'm dead. Well, I can't be here if I'm dead. But I'm injured. You said that. So now I can take legal action against you. They were really careful not to let us be able to do that.
All right, but then you mentioned one of them in the response from the governing body, they implied that you might be falling into conspiracy theories. Aren't you afraid precisely that people will think you're part of a movement that sees evil everywhere, when in the end vaccination was a measure that was more or less adopted in several countries? Even the WHO talked about it, etc. So, aren't you afraid of being associated with that kind of person?
Well, first of all, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're already considered a conspiracy theorist, you know. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Satan is everywhere, you know. So evil is everywhere, and except for Jehovah's Witnesses, evil is everywhere. And Satan, he made a plot precisely. In the classic explanation of Jehovah's Witnesses, Satan is the conspirator, you know. So we expose this conspiracy. So there you go. If we want to go down that road, if we want to play with words, so earlier you mentioned anti-vax. Well, for me, it doesn't bother me if people say I'm anti-vax, a conspiracy theorist, or whatever you want. Anti-vaxxers, meaning those who are not vaccinated like me. I've never been vaccinated because my parents didn't want it, that's all. They had their reasons. My mother got sick after her father had her vaccinated. It's those who are opposed to being personally vaccinated, basically. They just don't want to get the shot themselves, they simply don't want it, but they're not actually trying to stop others from getting vaccinated. It's important to really understand that, because we absolutely shouldn't twist things around. In reality, today, society is forcing us to do something. But people like me, we can't ban vaccines, we can't forbid vaccines. People are free to make their own choices, their own decisions in their own way. And so what I observed among the members of the governing body is that actually they followed what is being criticized. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses have always denounced the UN as being the image of the beast, so belonging to Satan's world. So the WHO belongs to the UN. Why did they follow the UN? Why did they follow the WHO? All the measures without thinking? I mean, they never gave us any scientific explanations, really, never.
Well, one could maybe reply to you that there was an emergency, that they were managing the emergency in a normal context, in a normal situation, under normal circumstances, where they would have had time to test the vaccines. But here, there was a pandemic. So that's the official version. So we needed a vaccine that could eradicate this pandemic. What would you say to that argument?
Well, then, why didn't they let the authorities handle it? Actually, how were they able to take on that authority is just not possible. I mean, they could have said, well, listen, you follow the higher authorities, but this isn't our field. We're religious figures. It's not our area. They should let us be free. You do what you want. That's it. And they should have let people be free. I mean, if they didn't have any connection with the UN, they should have let people be free. But I think they did have connections. In one of my videos that I made, I show that actually there were very significant financial interests involved in following. All the religions were pushed to promote the vaccine. And if they didn't do it, they would lose their financial benefits. So financial benefits, it's like in France. If you're a religious association, you don't pay taxes. That's it. In the United States, it's the same. 501c3 organizations with 501c3 status, well, they don't pay taxes. And here, I think they're afraid of losing that status and having to pay millions, more than 100 million euros in taxes.
So actually, you're making the connection between this law, this so-called tax issue, and the decision by the governing body to put some kind of pressure on everyone to get vaccinated. Is that right?
Yes, exactly, because they kept talking about it. They talked about it for 6 months, actually a bit more. But what really shocked me was that from July 2021 until January 2022, and then in January 2022, there was a decision by the United States Supreme Court that removed the vaccination mandate for companies with more than 100 employees. So from that point on, we didn't hear anything, nothing at all, and they should have noticed because they had announced the deaths to us. There was an incredible number of deaths. For example, the Jehovah's Witnesses, who were highly vaccinated, had more than 4 times as many deaths as the general population. Wow. It's crazy. And right away, they stopped, When in January 2022, there were 22,000 deaths, I just did a simple division. 22,000, 8 million divided by 22,000, and you get 4 times higher than the global proportion. So afterwards, if you like, there was the emergency, right? I'm fine with that, anything that encourages vaccines, tests. But I mean, in January 2021, when vaccination really started to be widely accepted in France, I'm talking about France, for example, and it was the same in the United States, we immediately had deaths, We immediately had deaths. There was a vaccine, AstraZeneca, that was banned in France in March 2023. Sorry, in March 2021. In March 2021, it was banned because there were young people who developed myocarditis. And then with everything that happened, the governing body in July 2021 started putting on the pressure. It's criminal. It's criminal because if you recommend a product that can lead to death, it's criminal. It's criminal. It's homicide.
And the fact of saying, for example, between 2 dangers, you have to choose the less dangerous one, in quotes. So between vaccination and possibly the side effects and the pandemic we're trying to avoid, maybe we could choose the pandemic. Yes, but then maybe we could choose not to take the vaccine to avoid the pandemic.
Here, we're in the realm of the individual, and you can't choose in this case precisely. That's it. That's the big mistake that's generally made. People say, yes, there were a few deaths because of the vaccine, but it saved millions of lives. Yeah, okay, well, listen, let's take your son, we'll sacrifice him, and that way he'll save everyone else. So it's fine. It's good when it's not you. But if it's you, well, listen, we'll sacrifice you then. That's forbidden. Legally, that's forbidden. I mean, when people say that, they don't realize it's forbidden. You don't have the right to say, here you're going to sacrifice yourself. To force someone to sacrifice themselves to save others. It's forbidden. It's forbidden. Well, then, when you're a Jehovah's Witness and you believe in God, of course, there's a lot to say about that. But when you're a Christian, when you follow Christ, well, it's just not possible. I spent a year in prison for not killing others, for not learning how to kill, It's not even about killing, but about not learning to kill. And now I'm supposed to take a stand in favor of a measure that could kill. But not who risks. I saw my sister, not my biological sister, my spiritual sister. In my group, she took 4 doses of the vaccine and died. And each time, starting from the second dose, she had really tragic consequences. She knew it. She knew it was the vaccine. She said, I know it's rotten, but, well, I'm a pioneer and I know I have to get vaccinated. There you go. I saw that. And, when you see that, you just say, okay, there's a terrible guilt there, a terrible guilt. I've seen things because I opened my eyes. But if you don't open your eyes, you don't see them. You don't see those things. Like, well, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things like that. The brothers who said, who systematically, it was before July 2021. Well, at that time, it was 21, 22. And we would see each other like that. And then people were sick. They'd say, man, I was really sick. I thought I was going to die. Oh, yeah, did you get the vaccine? Yeah, I got the 3rd dose before that. It was especially the 3rd dose, that was dull. I got the 3rd dose and he would say, good thing I got vaccinated because otherwise I would have died. So obviously it made me laugh because I had 0 doses and I had zero illness, 0 COVID, So I was able to see it, it wasn't just among Jehovah's Witnesses, it was at work and all that too. So I don't remember what you said. I wanted to respond to that, but...
Well, it's about calculating the dangers, actually. That is a risk assessment.
There you go. You can't do that with human lives. You just can't do that. If you personally want to sacrifice yourself for someone, well, that's your choice. You do it voluntarily.
Okay, I understood.
You simply can't decide for others.
Yeah, but it's relatively consistent. Your approach is consistent and it's understandable. You defend individual freedom because in any case, the consequences will be individual. You're known in France for publishing videos specifically on this subject and in great depth. The time and format here don't really allow us to go into detail. What's important to know is that you're well documented, and in particular, you have access to an open letter called in Spanish, Carta Abierta al Cuerpo Gobernante. Maybe you can show it to me, and perhaps you could also take a moment to tell us a bit more about this book, which has been quite important to you.
Yes, so actually, well, when I saw that there were, Jehovah's Witnesses who suffered serious injuries after the vaccines, I thought I have to give them a way to talk about it. I had a sister who was sick for a year. It was terrible, just terrible. She went through hell, lost her voice, well, all of that. She attended the meetings, and at the meetings they told her, no, but it's all in your head, It's in your head because Jehovah told you to get vaccinated. That can't be it. Because Jehovah, he can't tell you something bad. And so as a result, well, she couldn't speak anymore. She couldn't even say, I was in pain after my vaccination. She couldn't say that anymore because she questioned the narrative, and therefore Jehovah had recommended the vaccine. And so that's unbearable for a witness who, for those who were in that environment, it was unbearable to hear that. Thus I tell myself we must give them a way to speak. And so I did. Since I'm an IT specialist, I made some websites. I created the site adverseeventsjw.org so that those who have been hurt psychologically or physically can share their testimonies.
So actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to say that all the references that we mention here will be linked or made accessible on the description.
So after that, I went ahead and did it together with my wife. We had absolutely seen all of this before, and we did it in English, in German, as well as in Spanish. And actually, before we had done it in Spanish, I was contacted by a brother from Argentina whose username is Lucas1710. And he told me, I'm in the process of writing something. And 6 months later, he showed me his letter. And Well, he showed it to me, translated, because I don't speak Spanish. Even though the videos are translated into Spanish, that's artificial intelligence. But I thought to myself, this is explosive. I thought when I read it, it's explosive, but it's also terrible. Because he was really describing what I had experienced. They were really saying what I had gone through. And what's very important, well, here I'm showing it in French because I'm speaking in French now. But what's very important in this book, the sins committed during the COVID-19 pandemic, thank you, is that it is very compassionate. That's it. And he really was, as a Jehovah's Witness, very compassionate. The governing body, every time he wrote, "Dear brothers, dear members of the governing body," all that, he says, "I don't wish you any harm, but on the other hand, I have convictions that I learned as a Jehovah's Witness, and I will speak frankly." He speaks very frankly. And I wouldn't have been able to speak like that, frankly. And when I saw that, I said to myself, that's exactly it. He talks about Christian conscience, about how the publications, so only biblical references and references from the publications. So here you can't say that he went elsewhere, that he's an apostate or anything like that. No, only references from the organization. There you go. You said that Christian conscience, an inner body, the Apostle Paul in relation to food. And so that can be compared to medicine, all of that. And that's what you did. And you sinned. You sinned against Jehovah. You sinned against the Spirit. You will say, well, perhaps it's terrible. It's terrible, but it's terrible. It's glaringly true. It is written in two truths, and here there is a part about the sin committed. And so now we're halfway through the book. The first half was to show that the Christian conscience must be respected. That's always been said. And then here, the second half is about the sins you have committed. And here, when you read that, you say to yourself, yes, as a witness of joy, they have committed sins, really. They have committed the worst sins you can imagine.
While preparing this video, you told me, explained to me that for you, the impact of reading this open letter to the governing body was of the same importance as the writings of Franz by Raymond Franz, Crisis of Conscience. In particular, for you, does it have a similar impact and importance?
That's right. I'm showing the book, Crisis of Conscience. Actually, I read this book when I started to distance myself and stopped attending meetings, the book by Raymond Franz. And so it's true that at that point, I understood a lot of things because I had experienced the same thing. But for me, I recommend to all Jehovah's Witnesses around the world, or ex-witnesses, to get it, to buy it, even if they're not super interested, right away. But you have to have it in your library because there is a before and after university. And there, Raymond Franz reveals sins that were committed, which led to deaths. It's the same here. Sins are being exposed that resulted in death, of thousands of brothers and sisters. It is estimated, and I'm not the only one to estimate this, but it is estimated at 20 to 30,000 Jehovah's Witnesses who have lost their lives. Because since I've been studying all the statistics a bit on vaccination, it's about 1 death per 1,000 injections. So with a set of 3 injections, it goes down to 1 death for every 300 injections. So 1 in 1,000, if you take 8 million divided by 1,000, that makes 8,000. And if you do 3 times 8, 24, that's about it. That actually matches the numbers they started to announce. And then after that, they immediately stopped doing it. So honestly, it's a book that will resonate a bit if we've distanced ourselves from the Jehovah's Witnesses. But when you're still in that mindset, you really understand that there were some very, very bad things. And what's interesting is himself. When I read it, it had such an effect on me that I told myself, I'll translate it into French, and it took me a long time because it's true that a book like that, 200, 300, 400 pages, it's long. I wanted to translate it well. I had it proofread, all of that. And then I made sure it was translated into German. I know some ex-brothers and sisters who were extremely... It's been 10 years since they stopped being Jehovah's Witnesses, well, since they distanced themselves. And they were so moved that they did everything they could to translate it into German, into English. It was also translated by a sister, who, by the way, was excommunicated for having translated it, it has to be said. She and her husband, the husband hadn't done anything. She was the one who translated the book. She was excommunicated. So it's available in 4 languages, and I hope that normally this month it will be published in Lingala. There you go. So
we'll see. It's serious. It's serious. Who is in the original Spanish language? It was translated into French, so it's available in French, German, and Portuguese.
No.
Portuguese, okay. English, French, German, Spanish, and in English, see you soon.
That's exactly it.
All right, we can connect it anyway, yeah.
For me, technically, I actually knew how to do it. I published it on Amazon and on Apple. So it's available in both print and digital versions on Amazon. It's available in print on the websites I created. That is adverseeventsjw.org for the English version. So you can freely find it in digital format. You can get it for free. And on Amazon, you can find it in print or digital format. And on Apple as well. So there you go. You can read it at your leisure. But I mean, it's not about the money. I know that as soon as something is being sold, people say, oh, he just wants to make money. The price of €11 on Amazon was pretty much the minimum to print, to acknowledge the cost of the paper. So there you have it. It's a book. I personally recommend it. If you don't want to spend any money, read it in electronic format. But otherwise, I recommend you add it to your library. Feel free to share it. For all those who have been affected by the vaccine, whether directly or indirectly, even those who were on the fence and ended up getting vaccinated. As for the pro-vaxxers, I mean what we call pro-vaxxers, those who are convinced about vaccination and were the first to get vaccinated, they probably won't find this relevant, that's for sure. Honestly, I estimate that about 30% of Jehovah's Witnesses were pro-vaxxers. That is 30% of people who said, yes, vaccination is great, it's a good thing. They were the first to go get vaccinated, but the others, they were all hesitant. You had 70% who were hesitant. So among those who were hesitant, only about 10% were truly unyielding, who resisted everything. But well, that too, if you will, clearly shows that there was pressure. You can't say that at the beginning. I'm telling you, before July 2021, we were there saying, are you getting vaccinated? Oh no, I can't trust it and all that. It was open, and that's when there was freedom of expression. Whereas afterwards, that freedom of expression disappeared. And as a result, it destroyed everything. It was truly totalitarian.
Yeah, well, listen, the message has been conveyed, even if only for informational purposes. It's always good to get informed in order to... Now we understand the ins and outs. The link will be posted right here for your reference. So you actually quote some passages from this book, from this open letter to the governing body, in particular notably using the word sin, the sins of the governing body. Is it this aspect of the issue that made you consider taking steps to summon the members of the governing body to a religious disciplinary committee? That's really an unusual approach. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, because I was an elder for 25 years. When you are an elder, you are often approached by members of the congregation. When someone commits a sin who comes to tell us about it, they might say, hey, I saw so-and-so spending time with such and such person, and I thought you should know. The elders are there to deal with sins, offering guidance and support to those who need it. So I said to myself, wait, we've always said that the members of the governing body are brothers, just like you and me, ordinary people who are not above anyone else. Okay, they are men, fishermen. They're sinful men. They go out preaching. They eat meals. There's no one who is superior to another. As an elder, if you see your brother sinning, what do? You go to him and say, listen, you're sinning right now. Look at what God's word says, and so on. It's explained very clearly in the book. If he doesn't respond or if he doesn't correct himself, then you should talk to others about it. And then in the end, it becomes public. I mean, it's something that really needs to be properly handled at the judicial level. When I talk about sin, I'm not referring to the justice system of the countries, but to the internal level within the organization. And here it's simple because I'm going to refer back to the Elders book. The Elders book says in chapter 12, paragraph 1, when the elders learn that a serious wrongdoing has been committed, the elders must act without delay in order to protect the congregation and to help the wrongdoers. Jude the 4th. If the elders neglected to handle such matters, it could hinder the action of Jehovah's Holy Spirit on the congregation. The elders must first very carefully make sure that the wrongdoing or misconduct is truly serious enough to fully and completely justify the formation of a judicial committee. In my role as an elder, I personally saw cases where they killed people. Obviously, they sinned gravely, so this is something that absolutely needs to be dealt with and addressed promptly and appropriately without any delay. Honestly, that's how I felt. I used to say it before I left, I would say, but in this case, a judicial committee is what's needed. And so when Lucas 17:10 in fact authored that particular book, which I translated, I saw that he completely agreed with me. He said he must appear before a religious disciplinary committee. So as a result of our discussions, we eventually agreed, but at that time, there were only 2 of us involved. So then I decided to make my own video series in order to tell all the brothers who were elders or former elders, every single one of them, that if they agreed with me, then we should proceed to organize and hold a judicial committee. And so we succeeded. There are 4 of us in summoning each member of the governing body at the time, so 8 in total, to a judicial disciplinary committee.
All right, so if I understand correctly, this was your initiative. You brought other people into this endeavor, notably Lucas, who wrote the open letter to the governing body. And are you a collective of several people?
There are 4 of us. There are 4 of us elders who make up this religious discipline committee. You are still an elder yourself.
You're an elder, still a Jehovah's Witness.
I'm not an elder.
Okay.
But I haven't left the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
Because everyone who makes up this committee is either an elder or a former elder.
All right. So, based on your experience, you feel legitimate in taking this approach?
Exactly. Because as for me, the only reason I'm no longer an elder is that I was removed by the branch office when I told them they were sinning, the France branch office. When I said they were sinning by forbidding unvaccinated elders from attending training sessions, they wrote to the elders in my congregation and said, "Make sure they're removed." So there you have it. In any case, I wouldn't have stayed anyway, because for me, as an elder, I felt like I was complicit. For about a year, if you can believe it, I kept telling my wife, I honestly don't know if it's really worth staying on as an elder. Because you're complicit in a way.
I imagine you're expecting some objections to this idea, at least for now. Perhaps even a bit of doubt or uncertainty about whether this approach is truly the right one to take. You might be wondering, what exactly is the concrete objective here? What are we really aiming?
The objections to this, as you said, specifically, what exactly are they? What do you say? That it's pointless or things like that?
I am playing devil's advocate. Someone could argue that this kind of approach only fits within the framework of Jehovah's Witnesses norms. These are former Jehovah's Witnesses who believe. In the context of all the criteria they use to form a religious disciplinary committee, it's within a system, and you're outside the system, yet I'm using this system. Already, it's a bit unusual. And then, what kind of response do you think you'll get? Do you think the members of the governing body will answer you, will accept? What is the purpose? What is the purpose?
Well, first of all, as for whether we're inside the system or not, I really don't see any particular or significant objection whatsoever to the fact that as a former elder and member of the community, I could actually set up a religious disciplinary committee. I feel perfectly capable of doing it, and so do the others, without any doubt whatsoever. In fact, not only do we feel capable, but we also feel genuinely responsible for this important task. That's it. If we didn't do it, we simply wouldn't be acting responsibly at all. So there is sin. We denounce the sin, and then we simply help our brothers to repent, to truly and sincerely change. It's really a minor point, but it's important to understand the objective here. The objective of this process, as clearly stated by Jehovah's Witnesses, is as follows. You go to your brother and you tell him directly, look, you've sinned, you've done something wrong, and it's not just a small mistake, it's something serious, so you need to repent. You need to take responsibility and do something about it to make things right. It's like, for example, imagine you have a brother in a congregation who has broken the law. Let's say he killed someone. Well, you go to see him personally, and you tell him to repent, to apologize, and to make amends to the family. This is not just about pointing out faults, but about encouraging genuine change and reconciliation. So, as you were saying, that was about whether we're truly following the rules or not. and whether we're applying these principles in our lives as members of the congregation.
It's about the legitimacy of the approach.
Anyway, there you go. Of course, they're at the top, but just because you're at the top, that doesn't mean you're not responsible for your actions or decisions. There's no, well, obviously if you want, because even if you look at the Elders book, it doesn't specifically say, it doesn't actually say that it's only within your own congregation. If you see a brother kill someone who isn't in your congregation, you take care of it. You know what I mean? That's the point, really. You understand what I'm saying, right? That's just how it is, honestly. That's just the way things work, you know?
But for example, you are no longer an elder, and normally it's a structure that's managed by elders. A committee is formed by elders.
Here, we're just playing with words, but in spirit, I'm still exactly the same.
All right, so what am I trying to say?
I still feel responsible for what I used to be. All of that is clear. And then, if you want, actually, those kinds of arguments are really mostly used to avoid taking responsibility. For me, it's all those people who say that because they're afraid, they're just simply afraid. No, really, someone sins, someone kills people, we deal with that. Me, I'm not afraid. I was afraid for quite a while when I was a Jehovah's Witness because, because of this or that thing. No, this is above everything. It's above everything. So that's it. That's about the structure. Then you had another question.
Yes, is this approach aimed at obtaining justice, recognition, reparation, or is it mainly a symbolic spiritual gesture? Is it to create a buzz? You know, all the questions that can come up from this.
So it's not a symbolic gesture, that's for sure. It's not a symbolic gesture. We're doing it because we have to do it. That's it. It's a truly internal conviction. I can't live with myself if I don't speak out about this, if I don't address it. You see, it's part of me. And the Argentinian brother, it's the same for him. He's even more committed than I am. But what I mean is we see things, we see people who have died, people who have been injured. We've seen that, we see that, and we can't cover it up. We can't cover it up. And that's the tragedy of our history. That's the tragedy of history. Whenever there have been catastrophes, crimes against humanity, there are always people who cover things up or who stay silent or who cover things up out of fear. What will happen to me and all that. And then there are those who speak out, who tell everything that happened, even at the risk of their own lives. But there are those who say what happened, well, if you like, that's the spirit we're in. We do it because we do it. It's justified on a religious level because we've always lived in that environment. That's it. And at the same time, well, it's not right that people like that should be immune to any kind of attack. I mean, it's not possible. We can't imagine a religious organization saying, this is a sin, that's a sin, but if I do it, it's not a sin. For me, that's not at all how I saw things when I was a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, my idea was that the governing body were examples of spirituality, so there you go. I realized that wasn't the case, but there's no way they should be immune, that they should have total immunity. That's just not possible. So the only thing they have to do is acknowledge it and apologize at the very least, and then they need to answer in court for all the harm they've caused.
So in fact, this is a denunciation. It's a form of denunciation. So did you really try to set up a committee? You didn't literally form a committee in case they agreed to come to the auberge court.
Yes, we did indeed form a religious disciplinary committee. We invited each member individually, and we are going to meet with each member via video conference.
And if they refuse to participate, which is likely...
So if they don't come, we've given each of them a deadline. If they don't show up, we'll meet together. We'll follow what we've always been told. We'll meet together. So we follow the Elders' Handbook. If the accused doesn't come, then we meet together. We discuss everything that has been done, and then we make a decision to disfellowship or to do nothing, or Well, that's it. In fact, what do the elders do when they do this? They listen to the person to see if they are repentant. If they are sufficiently repentant, they say, well, we understand your repentance, we accept it, and so on. Otherwise, if they realize the person is not repentant, then they are disfellowshipped. That's it. So we'll meet among ourselves, and then we'll decide whatever we decide. And in that case, we've planned to record it on video and post it online so that as many people as possible can be informed about what was decided by Jehovah's Witnesses in a religious disciplinary committee.
So you're actually going to make the judicial hearing officially open to the public?
Exactly. That's what we did.
All right. All right. Have you already received any feedback, responses, reactions, criticism, threats, or anything else like that so far?
For now, we haven't really shared it widely with others or the public. It's really just been said that we were planning to do it, and nothing more has come of it yet. In my video, I made my series of videos, among other things, to look for elders who do this. I said that there were enough of us, so for now, what we're doing is summoning them individually and keeping things a bit private so that we can, give them the opportunity to simply talk to us, to tell us, to explain to us what happened. That would be interesting. It would be interesting for them to come one by one and tell us what happened, to have their version, and maybe they'll tell us what you were saying, that they acted in an emergency and all that. Why Anthony Morris, who is no longer a member of the Central Committee? It's interesting to see what he has to say. We're trying. It's also a way to try to establish dialogue. Are they on their pedestal, and you see, where are they? Do they consider themselves like all the other Jehovah's Witnesses as brothers? And are they going to come down or simply talk with brothers who want to speak out about what they've done? That's it.
All right, okay. Well, listen, in any case, it's an approach that deserves credit for being original, and the name says it all, summoned, because there's a justification. There's really a moral basis that, in your view, is, as you yourself have pointed out, legitimate. In any case, former Jehovah's Witnesses know very well that the governing body is an authoritarian, hierarchical power. There's really no debate on that subject, but it's true that the form your denunciation takes is interesting, at the very least.
What's also interesting here is that we have video evidence. So what we've planned to do is to show each time the intervention of the relevant governing body member and ask him, do you really think you didn't encourage Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide to get vaccinated? Could you please explain it to us in a bit more detail so that everyone can understand? So we'll play the brief video segment for you, because almost all of them, there are a few, I think one or two, who didn't speak on video, but that's it. We just want to get their personal opinion on the matter. Plain and simple. So here at least we have clear, concrete, and compelling evidence, whereas on other matters things are a bit more vague and uncertain. Here we actually have evidence that will allow me or others as well to take appropriate legal action, including, if necessary, with the courts in different countries, in various jurisdictions if it comes to that.
Perfect. Well, listen, Ghislain. Thank you so much, because you gave very lengthy and comprehensive answers. You provided a lot of valuable and insightful details, at least regarding France, for videos that indeed expose the Central Palace in its important and significant role of oversight. I really like the term cabinet, because that's truly what it's about, and we've seen that you are very active in exposing these issues, so that's really very interesting. To finish, once again, thank you. Is there anything you would like to add that might help position yourself, or something you would like to emphasize at the end of this video?
I'll just finish by saying that, well, I am taking legal action against the various Jehovah's Witness associations in France. I'm doing this for two reasons. For discrimination, because I received a letter on December 19th, 2022, telling me that if I wasn't vaccinated, I wouldn't be allowed to attend the elders' classes. I was an elder at the time. So that's discrimination. So there are two of us. For now, there are two of us filing this complaint, and I am also going to take action against the local Jehovah's Witness Association. So that means the congregation, just to make it simple, because they refuse to delete my data. So here I can also say to everyone listening, whether they are Jehovah's Witnesses or not, that it's me, all of this. Delete, request the deletion of your data. For me, that's the best way to have peace of mind. The sister who translated the book into English, she didn't do that. She was disfellowshipped. If you request the deletion of your data, they can't disfellowship you. So you do what you want. You are free. That's freedom. I don't want to write letters and submit myself and say, no, you delete my data because I have the right and you have to do it. And if they don't want to do it, well, then I'll take them to court. So I have two lawyers, one for discrimination and one for data deletion. And what I recommend is that everyone shouldn't be afraid, but really you shouldn't be afraid, you know? If you're convinced that you're doing the right thing, then you're doing the right thing and you shouldn't be afraid, you shouldn't be afraid. And so in my videos, I tried in the third video, I tried to show techniques that actually help you not to be afraid, to be completely honest with yourself, and also to maintain cordial relationships with other people. That's it.
All right, well, your message has been received. Thank you so much. In that case, let me remind you that this is a video series aimed at showing the diversity of testimonies within the community of those who have left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and this perspective was particularly interesting. Thanks also to Doctrina Peligrosus for allowing us to share this video, and I hope we'll see each other again next time. Thank you, everyone. Just remember, don't be not afraid in the blue sky. Take that man. He's just a little uncertain, just